Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today, I share the story of Matt Underwood, the play-by-play announcer for the Cleveland Indians. Matt suffered from allergies, inflammation, and even had an inhaler for his asthma. In 2017, Matt changed to a plant-based diet, and all of these symptoms disappeared. Here's Matt's transformative story. Matt, I'm really excited to have you on the show. It's fantastic.
Well, Fred, the funny thing is there aren't a lot of us plant-based people in the game of baseball. So when you and I got to talking and I realized that you were plant-based as well, it was like, I found a friend, somebody that's like me. So, it is, I think it is a lifestyle that is getting more and more momentum with each passing day and week and month. It hasn't quite cracked the barrier of the sports arena that we both work in and know so well. But, I think any progress is positive, and I think I think there will come a day, probably in our lifetime, where you're going to hear more and more professional athletes talking about the fact that they've decided to make the switch and go to a plant-based diet.
Yeah, now, have you seen that Gamechangers movie?
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing is, you wish everybody could see it because it does a good job of trying to dispel some of the myths that frankly, we all grew up with.
Right.
We all grew up with the food pyramid and didn't realize until much later in life that the food pyramid is upside down.
Right.
And I think there is a great amount of myths surrounding protein. I mean, when I first went to plant-based diet, that's the number one question. Well, how do you get your protein?
Right.
And,
right.
You have to explain to people, look, if you're eating beef, the cow didn't just magically get the protein. It got the protein from eating the plants. It's just the middleman. And so I think it just takes a lot of education to get people to understand that you don't need animals to get your protein. And there's just so many more, benefits along the way from not eating, animal-centric products on a daily basis.
Right. Now, how long have you been vegan?
I'm a newbie. So when I first met my wife in 1992, she was already transitioning to vegetarian. I think she ate maybe a little bit of chicken, occasionally some seafood, but she was already moving in that direction. And I think once you start down that road, it's a natural progression to go from vegetarian to vegan. And eventually she made that switch, and really smoothly. But I went kicking and screaming. I mean, for years and years and years, she would be in the kitchen making, something for herself, and I'd be out on the deck grilling a steak or chicken or hot dogs or whatever.
Right.
Because growing up in the Midwest, fairly common household, my mom made, well-balanced meals, but the centerpiece was always some type of an animal protein, and it's just the way I grew up. And so it was hard to wrap my head around not eating meat at all. And it was 2017, so only about 3 years ago, middle of the baseball season. It was the All-Star break, and I just got to a point where, I am sick of feeling bloated, heavy, sick of my clothes not fitting right.
Right.
And
now,
I decided I'm going all in.
Right. Now, you travel a lot, so you're feeling this way. You have this break in the middle of the season, and you're feeling like crap, and you travel all the time, and so I would guess that your diet at that point was not great.
No, it was not great. It was a typical, American diet. I mean, I ate meat a lot. If not lunch and dinner, sometimes breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so, I dabbled in, because my wife is such a really good in the kitchen, and she can make a lot of great plant-based meals. And so I would try those, and I liked them, but I still wanted to have my want to have my filet mignon or whatever the case may be. And, but I never, here's the thing for me. I never made the connection between how I felt and the food that I was putting in my body.
Right.
And I just brushed it off to, you name it. I made something up. Well, the reason my shoulder's stiff is because I overdid it at the gym, not realizing that, when you're eating heavy animal products, it causes great inflammation, and your body can only put out so many fires. I suffered from terrible allergies and asthma occasionally, and I was always thinking, well, it's because it's dusty in here, or I would just think up things, never understanding that it's the food, dummy. It's what you're putting in your body on a daily basis that is causing all of these other maladies. And once I made the switch, all of those things went away, and it was like, ding, the light bulb finally went on, and I realized this, not only is this sustainable, this is the only way I'm going to be able to live my life.
Right. So you're saying that you had allergies and they just went away after you changed?
Yeah, almost completely.
Now, what type of allergies?
Yeah, my allergies weren't crippling to the point where I couldn't function, but I'd wake up and I would just do nothing but sneeze for 15 straight minutes.
Really?
I would just have a lot of congestion, and then I would get these. I would have this asthma, not chronic to where I needed to have daily treatments, but I would have an inhaler for when it got to the point where I was really having trouble breathing, and I was starting to lean on that thing more and more and more, and I just realized there's something not right, and it's not just because of airborne problems. It's what I'm eating, and so when I cut out dairy, which was the hardest thing for me, really, because I love cheese and I just like a lot of dairy products. That was the first connection where I was like, oh man, all these allergy symptoms they're just not there anymore. I'm not feeling congested. I'm not having sneezing attacks. And so it was just, it was as if somebody waved a magic wand. And so that was a big eye opener for me. And it made me understand that this isn't a short term, this isn't a 30-day diet and then you go back to eating the way you did. This is something that you have to stick with. In my mind, I had to stick with this if I want to feel better and not have to deal with all the gunk.
Right. Now, so back in 2017 at the All-Star game, let's get back to that. You have that All-Star break and you're feeling like crap and you decide what? You decide that you're just going to go vegan, or do you decide you're going to slowly work it in all at once? How did you go about it?
I decided I had to go all in. I didn't want to do meatless Mondays and sort of just slowly, transition my way in. Part of what helped me immensely is having a wife who's already in the game, so to speak. So I think it would be very difficult, and I can't imagine how hard it was for her all those years, to be in a relationship where one of you is and one of you isn't. Mm-hmm. Because you're constantly trying to find restaurants that will accommodate both styles of diet, and when you're in the kitchen at home, you're making two completely separate meals in some cases. So it helped me a lot that she was already in, so she was able to easily guide me. Like, okay, here's what you need to do. These are some of the things you're going to want to eat, and I think there was two parts to this. One, you just have to change your mentality,
right?
And for so many of us growing up. When you think of lunch, you think of what? Sandwich. I'll have a sandwich. Well, guess what? Sandwiches aren't a great idea now.
Right.
So think of different ways. And the more you change your mentality about what you're going to eat, the easier it becomes. And then, she was able to show me when I'm on my own. When I go to spring training, I'm on my own for months. So she was able to give me some simple recipes. Here's how you can cook for yourself in your apartment when you're in spring training, and you'll be able to sustain this and not fall right back into your old habits when you're on your own.
Right. Like what type of things would she give you to make? I'm sure peanut butter and jelly was a big one. We're not by any means accomplished chefs at all, but we can pull off just about anything that we have a recipe for. So
In a lot of cases, it was just, make the easy stuff because I'm not even in her category. So it was make your own pasta sauce. I love doing that in the off season anyway. And it's 100% vegan. It's just tomatoes and basil. And so I was able to make pasta sauce, and then you can find brown rice pasta if you want to eliminate some of the gluten issues.
Mm-hmm.
Quinoa pastas, I can't tell the difference. They're really good alternative in terms of the pasta.
Now, do you go away from the gluten, or
I don't have an issue with it, so it doesn't bother me. But I try to limit it as best I can, because I just think that you load up on bread, you're going to have that lead belly feeling.
Right.
I just don't want to have that. Just don't want it. No,
I agree. So you're making pasta sauces and stuff like that in spring training. Are there any other, do you have any recipe books that you use all the time? Or?
Oh man, in our kitchen we have an entire shelf. Wicked Healthy is phenomenal. I mean, the Sarno brothers are awesome. Thug Kitchen is one I think that's really good for people that are just transitioning, because they keep it light and fun. It's not serious, and they're making it really basic, simple stuff that anybody with any skill at all can make in the kitchen. And then the more advanced stuff, my wife has Issa's. Can't think of her last name, but
Moskowitz.
Yeah, Issa Does It is her cookbook, and
that's a great one.
Oh, She Glows.
Yep.
So we have it, and Crossroads is one of our favorite restaurants in Los Angeles on Melrose.
Yeah, that's a great one.
So we got their cookbook too, and by the way, one of their chefs is a Cleveland guy.
Oh, really?
Scott Jones is from Cleveland, Indians fan. So we've reached out and connected a few times. And I just think the other thing, Fred, that I remember when I first started was I was always looking for sort of meat substitutes, because I still had that kind of craving, and I wanted to have something that reminded me of. So I was eating a lot of Beyond the Meat burgers and those products, which, hey, they're a great alternative, but don't fool yourself. It's still kind of vegan junk food. So at first I was loading up on a lot of that stuff. And then the more I moved away from that, the more I got into just what is truly plant-based whole foods. That's sort of the barrier. You break through that, and then you understand that this is a really healthy and great alternative. Those other products are great, because every once in a while you just want a burger, and they're fabulous to have on hand. But it's probably not a good idea to say I'm going to go vegan for anybody that hasn't gone down this path and just eat that stuff on a daily basis. You want to limit that, because it's still highly processed, and that's something I think we're always trying to move away from.
Yeah, I mean, you could go to Burger King every day and be vegan, but and eat an Impossible Burger, but that's not really gonna get you there, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. You're still gonna end up feeling pretty miserable most of the time.
Right. I think that those whether it's Impossible Burgers or Beyond Burgers or whatever the casual fast food is, it's a great way to transition or help people transition to more of a plant-based diet.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I've really enjoyed, with the help of the Sarno boys, they've shown you how to take mushrooms and make just full-on meals. And I'm not talking about, like kind of the button mushrooms that we all grew up seeing in our salads, but some of the more exotic stuff like maitake mushrooms and sometimes called a lion's mane mushroom or a pom-pom mushroom. If you looked at these things, you'd say, I'm not eating that. Are you kidding me? But when they show you how you cook it, in a skillet where you basically sear it and flatten it down, and by the time you're done cooking it, it's about as close to a really good meat alternative as you'll ever find. So those are things that I really enjoy, mushrooms and a lot of beans. My wife makes unbelievable black beans that we eat whenever we're going to have Mexican food, and that's something that and rice. I used to never eat rice ever. I just never liked it, and now I find myself really enjoying, beans and rice, or rice with vegetables. She made a curry dish last night that was just off the charts with broccoli and carrots and some tofu, and we had that over rice, and it was just outstanding.
That's awesome. I mean, that's the thing. I think that what it does is it opens you up to either other cultures or, I mean, you mentioned Mexican food, Thai food. It just opens you up to all the different alternatives, and it opens you up to different types of food, whether it's mushrooms or seitan or whatever it is. It's something that I think that opens your eyes a little more than I know it has for me.
Yeah, I remember, when I come to your town, when I'm in Boston, there's a great pho restaurant right over there. I think it's on Charles Street, and that's something that 10 years ago I would have never even thought about trying. But now I love pho. Every city I go to, I'm always looking, where's a good pho place? Because it's very simple, and yet it's so clean and so filling that you walk out of there after a big bowl of that, you're good to go for the whole day. So you're right. It has opened my diet up to so many different types of foods and styles of food, and that's fun. And I think also, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I gave too much power to food, and I think that's something you got to get away from. I talk about this all the time with my wife. Sometimes when we travel, we're on a plane. They don't have a lot of alternative meals on the plane for vegans. And you know what? I get it. It's an airplane. This is not a flying, gourmet restaurant.
Right.
And so it's okay. It's okay to be hungry.
Right.
It's okay to not eat something below average just because you feel like you got to fill your gullet. Just wait till you get to the next stop and then go out and find a good place. And so that's something I've had to really wrap my head around and get away from that. Well, I'm kind of hungry. I should just throw something in. No, don't do that, because then you're going to feel miserable. And so, I try to, as much as possible, always have some packs of cashews or almonds in my bag. And that way, if I'm on the plane and the only thing they have is some kind of, meal with just, meat and gravy, then I'll have some cashews and a couple apples. And by the time we get to where we're going, then I can always go out and find something at a good local restaurant. So those are there's little things along the way that you have to overcome so that you don't fall back into your old habits.
Right. So as far as like tips and tricks, I guess, for traveling, what would you suggest? I mean, you mentioned having some almonds or some nuts or cashews or whatever in your bag, and anything else that you find that is kind of a tip or trick that you find helps you?
Well, you're the one that turned me on to the app, Happy Cow. And it's a wonderful app because you just click on it, and no matter where you're at, it'll show you every restaurant that's in the area by miles, how far away from it you are, that is either vegetarian or vegetarian options or vegan completely. So that's a really good app to have if you travel, because sometimes you're in a city, you don't know the city, you don't know where to go, and rather than scrolling through your phone doing just a regular search, here's an app that, bang, it's going to give you a bunch of options. So that's huge. And I just think also, just for me anyway, it's all about trying to prepare as much as possible. So if I know we have a game and then we're traveling after that game and it's going to be a couple-hour flight, I will try to get out before I go to the ballpark that day, whatever city we're in, and I'll go and get something that I can throw in my bag that I can eat later on the plane, so that when I am hungry after the game and I do want something, I'm not just sitting there with nothing to eat at all. So, the cool thing is a lot of the big cities now have a Whole Foods. And so they're really good at, giving you some vegan options. Some of the stuff's already prepared vegan food, so you can just throw it right in your carry-on bag. I just think that the key is always thinking ahead, because for me, and again, I can only speak for myself, but I make horrible decisions when I'm really, really hungry.
Right.
And so you try to get to a point where you've got something on hand, so that when you're sitting there and you're really, really hungry and you didn't plan ahead, you don't make just a bad decision just because you're hungry.
Right. Now, I mean, you talk about planes and things, and I mean, I'm on planes a lot as well. I just always think, it's only 2 hours or it's only 3 hours. You know what I mean? Okay, granted, you go on the West Coast or whatever, it can be 6 or whatever. But, I mean, that's like, I don't know, difference between eating at noon and eating, lunch at noon and eating dinner at 6 o'clock. It's not a big deal. You don't have to eat. And I think that's the big thing that I found was, you mentioned earlier the power of food. And I think that's one of the biggest things is that you find you control the food as opposed to the food controlling you. It's not like I see food, I have to eat food. It's more like, I don't really want that. Is that something that you find as well, or?
Yeah, and I think we have such a powerful emotional connection to what we eat because that we usually, at least in my case, usually there are just so many memories, like you think about eating pizza. I think about being a kid on Friday nights. Friday nights was pizza night at home because mom didn't want to have to cook a dinner, and it was just fun. It was something neat. So you associate all these great memories of pizza, and you forget about the fact that once you throw down that greasy slab of cheese and sauce, that you don't feel so great.
Right.
So it's important to always try to remember. Look, if I eat this, I'm not going to feel that great, and so that's why I just try to keep going back to, all right, you can still have the pizza, but just get the pizza without the cheese and load it up with peppers and onions, and it's still just as good. And you're not going to feel that, awful feeling the next day. And I think that just kind of goes hand in hand with every decision you make. You try to separate the emotional attachment you have with certain foods and just think more about, okay, in my case, I'm 51 years old. I've eaten everything. I know when I put this in my mouth how it's going to make me feel 15, 20 minutes to a half an hour later. So there's no mysteries out there. And so it's just making better decisions based on that. Based on your already experience and knowledge, you know what that's going to do to you. Do you really want to feel that way? If not, then just make the better choice. It's really that simple.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, all you have to do is look at that pizza about, 15 minutes after nobody's eaten it. And you're like, oh my God, that would have been in my belly, that hunk of nasty looking cheese.
Yeah. And I think also there is something to be said for the cleaner you eat, the better you feel. And there are just so many things that, we never thought of before. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. B. He's not one of those names that's hard to pronounce. He just goes by Dr. B. Mm-hmm. But he has a whole program enlightening people on your gut health and how important that is. And again, when you eat garbage, it just lays like sludge in your lower intestines, and it slows you down. It creates inflammation. So all these little aches and pains that you used to have, the better you eat, the cleaner you eat, those things just go away. And that to me was just such an eye opener to know that, I guess I didn't really overdo it at the gym. It was just, all this stuff that you're eating creates so much inflammation, and the body can only put out so many fires at one time. And so when you overload, when you're working out like crazy and you're eating poorly, eventually something's going to give. And as we get older, we realize we don't bounce back quite as well as we did when we were younger. So I think it just comes back to making better decisions when you eat. It just benefits you in every aspect of your life. And I'm talking about every aspect of your life, from how you handle things at work, how you deal with your coworkers, how you deal in your relationships, your libido, on and on and on. All of these things become better and more powerful when you're eating cleaner.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm trying to think, what do you think holds people back from, there's just seems to be all this stuff out there now, especially with the Gamechangers movie and all of that. And I agree with you 100% on feeling better and everything like that. Like, do you think it's just the people are just in a habit?
I think there's two things for me that I've noticed more than anything. The two big factors for me are, number one is lack of knowledge. And with that, maybe a stubbornness to, I don't even want to have to read a cookbook, or I don't want to have, you have to learn how to change the way you eat. Our pantry doesn't look anything like it looked 20 years ago, because you have to change the products that you're buying, the products that you're putting in your kitchen. They all have to you just have to change. And so you have to read up on it, and you have to understand, what you want to avoid and what you want to have on hand, so that when you're sitting there and you are hungry and you want to make something, you have the things right at your fingertips, as opposed to, well, now I've got to go to the store because I don't have nutritional yeast in my pantry. I mean, there's just things that you have to do to make yourself more knowledgeable and more comfortable to eat that way. And then I think, secondly, there is still, especially for men, maybe not so much for women, but I think for guys in particular, there are still a lot of guys who are afraid to be made fun of. Yeah. They are afraid that their buddies are going to rag on them if they're out the bar and they order hummus instead of a big plate of wings. Mm-hmm. And it's so silly. It's so stupid because, okay, when you're in 7th grade, I get it. You're going to give in to peer pressure. But most of us, when you're a grown adult, you're making decisions for yourself. You're not making decisions for your buddies. You got to make the decision on what's good for you and what you know is going to help you. And so, I mean, you deal with some good-natured ribbing, but I mean, in my experience, most guys, after a while, they start asking you questions. They start getting curious and they want to know. But I just think also I've dealt with people just throw their hands up. I was like, well, I could never give up meat. I could never give up this. I could never give up that. And what my wife finally got through my thick skull was, if you constantly look at this like you're giving something up, like it's a punishment, it will never work. You have to get your head wrapped around, how is this going to make me feel? I want to feel better. I want to be able to perform in my life in all aspects better. In order to do that, this is the way I need to start eating. And if you just look at it from that standpoint, then a lot of that other stuff is easy to just brush off and say, whatever, dude, go have your plate of wings. I'm fine over here.
Right. No, I get, quote, good-natured ribbing all the time. Yeah, it's funny because you do run into that kind of macho attitude where, oh, you're not, I don't know, you're not a guy, or you're not one of the guys if you don't eat the meat and all that stuff. But it's kind of funny because it's the one thing that, you sit there and you look at these people and you're like, okay, but I feel great. Why should I change the way I know how I felt before, and now I feel so much better. Why would I ever go back? And, you always get these guys that are like, hey, just between you and me, let's go have a burger, And I'm like, no, man. They're like, nobody will know. And I'll be like, I'll know. That's who will know. I'll know.
And I'll feel it. I was just down at Ohio State with a bunch of my college friends, guys that I played football with. And we were watching one of our buddies, his daughter plays women's ice hockey for Ohio State. And we were standing there rinkside watching a game. And I don't know how the subject came up, but somebody found out that I did yoga. And you would have thought that I cursed all of their mothers. They were like, what? You do yoga? And this went on for 5 straight minutes. And finally I said, how high does your heart rate get when you're working out, when you're doing your workout? And none of them knew it. So I get my heart rate up to about 150 beats per minute when I'm doing yoga. And I'm drenched with sweat when I'm done. So anytime you want to step in the octagon of yoga, you just let me know. So, I just think there is so much of that we grew up with, all of us did, that at some point you have to be able to just say, look, I don't know about you or the listeners, but I was raised to be an independent thinker, to do what I feel is right for me and not worry about what other people say. And to me, that's what this all comes back to. I'm going to do what I want to do. And if you want to make fun of me, that's fine. That's on you. I could care less because I'm sick of feeling the way I used to feel all the time. And I just really enjoy where I'm at right now in my life.
Yeah, I find that a lot of people will ask you questions, and I think secretly they just want to know, like, how is it possible that you can do this? And it's just a mental attitude.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, too, is that it's not necessarily a weight loss program necessarily. I mean, if you go vegan and you're let's say you're an adult male and you're our age, if you're 50 or maybe you're in your 40s and you're over 200 pounds and you're about 6 foot tall or so, I think you're going to lose weight no matter what. I don't think there's any question about it. But it's
Right.
not necessarily, viewed as a weight loss program. But what it does is that it gives you so much more energy. You want to do more things. So, you're going to want to go back to the gym or start working out, or you're going to want to get out in the yard and play with your kids more, or you're not going to be the old you that just wanted to lay on the couch all day and not do anything. All of a sudden, you've just got abundance of energy, and I think that's nothing but positive.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I think the hidden part of it is that you do feel so much more energized, and you're not just sitting there going, oh man, I could take a nap right now. You're just like, oh my God, I just want to go, I don't know, work out, or I want to go run around and do something. And I find that is one of those things that, because you do have more energy, you do want to work out, and it becomes that cycle of health, actually, as opposed to the other way around, where it's like a spiral down to, I guess, obesity and diabetes and overweight.
Yeah, and I feel like, for where I'm at right now, I feel so fortunate, because I think to when my wife Shelley started this journey for herself, which was probably, gosh, I'm guessing 15 years ago, when she probably went to a completely vegan diet. It was a lot harder then.
Right.
I mean, now I have so many resources at my disposal, and not just the foods. I mean, gosh, I can go to Whole Foods, and if I have a hunkering for a cream cheese dip, there's an almond-based dip that tastes just like the stuff we used to eat when we were kids, but it doesn't have the dairy in it. So there's just so many alternatives that you can eat food-wise. But in addition to that, like the resources and the people that are out there talking about it. So if you want to educate yourself, it's not that hard to find Rip Esselstyn and listen to his story. And his father was a cardiologist at Cleveland Clinic. And there's just so many people out there that are spreading the gospel, so to speak, like the Sarno brothers with their Wicked Healthy program. And so they're giving you the resources, like, look, here's how you can live this lifestyle, and you're not going to miss a beat. You're not going to be sitting there hungry all the time. You're not going to be wondering what to make for dinner. We're going to make it stupid simple for you. Right.
Now, so you went plant-based for your health. Do you notice that it's a very deep rabbit hole? Do you notice that it becomes the environment, the animals, and more do you run into that?
Yeah, I would say that it definitely has opened my eyes more to the global problem that it really has become. Growing up, I had no concept of how big the world was. And so those kind of issues never really entered my mind. As I got older, it never dawned on me that, gee, if there's a Burger King in every town, or McDonald's in every town, if there's a Subway in every town, and sometimes multiple ones. I mean, just look at New York City, how many fast food restaurants. Where is all that meat coming from to supply all of those restaurants? And there's steak restaurants, multiple steak restaurants in every city. When I was a kid, you'd be lucky to have one steak restaurant in a town. Now they're everywhere. So when you start wrapping your head around that question, then you realize how many cows it takes to feed all of those people on a daily basis. And then you see the stories about, what it's doing to the landscape. It is troubling. And I don't know. I mean, I've seen some of the stats that even if, even by Burger King introducing the Impossible Burger, if that can cut down on meat consumption a little bit, it's going to help. But I think somehow we need a bigger mass movement to say, hey, folks, if we're going to really be concerned about our planet going forward, we have to make some changes in how we go about our daily diet. And if we don't, the evidence, I think, is pretty clear that this is not going to end well if we continue down this path.
Right. And I just think that there's this huge disconnect. I know there was for me between the animals and just going to the store. Like, you don't even think about it. Like, oh, I'm just going to go to the store, pick up this packet of chicken or fish or steak. and you don't even think about where it came from or what part of this animal this is, or it's just so many different things that you start thinking about. I think that once you become plant-based, it just opens a huge door, and you don't have to go all the way in. You can just kind of look around, but it's something that is surprising.
Yeah, I think it was for me, because I never thought twice about, going to the store. And I mean, growing up, we had lamb. My mom is 100% Greek, and so the Greek side of our family, every Easter we had lamb. We'd have a lamb on a spit. We had all of those things, and just it never entered your mind about the idea that somebody killed a living being. Yeah, and I know some people have this. Somehow they have this this ability to disconnect. Well, it's just a cow. It's just a this. It's just a that. And it's like, yeah, but have you ever had a pet? I mean, that's a living animal too. And you're saying you would just as easily shoot your pet if you had to eat it because you wanted a hamburger? I mean, all those things start bouncing around in your head when you think about it more and more. And I think most people would rather, I just don't want to think about it. I don't want to know. All you have to do is go to a slaughterhouse one time, and it will probably change the way you look at that packet of beef in your store.
What do you think is the biggest challenge that you've had personally as far as changing over to a plant-based diet?
I think more than anything, it's just anytime I've been in a situation where whether it's a city or it's a restaurant or a ballpark where I'm with other people and I don't have an alternative, I can't go anywhere else. And then I'm looking around, I'm like even on our own ballpark, sometimes you go up to the dining room, and if they have vegetables, they have been steamed to the point where they're almost unrecognizable, or they're swimming in oil. And it's like, sometimes those can be challenging where you're, okay, well, it's a salad until I can get out of here and find something better. And I just keep going back to that. There are times where even if you're hungry, there might not be anything that's going to fit your diet. And so you might just have to wait. You just got to wait it out. And it's okay. I mean, I don't know the exact number on this, but I'm pretty sure the human body can go at least a day without eating, because people have done intermittent fasting from time to time. So you can just not eat crappy if you let yourself. That to me is the biggest thing. Just don't let yourself eat like garbage, because you'll be okay. You're gonna make it a few hours to where you can find something that is gonna A, benefit you, and B, you're not gonna feel like garbage after it.
Right. Okay. Finally, could you give me one word to describe how you felt before you were vegan, and now one word, and also, I guess, one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
I'd say before, regularly, I just felt tired, and now I just feel clean. So I think those would be the two words: tired, and now it's clean.
No, I think that those are great words, man, because you have so much energy and you feel so clean and, I don't know, good, juiced up or whatever, you know what I mean? When you have something good, your body seems to respond.
Yeah, and I just think it goes back to the same lessons we all learned when we were kids. If you're lucky enough to have good parents, they taught you. You have to make decisions not based on what everybody else is doing, but based on what you know to be true and what you know to be right. And if that means standing alone from the crowd, then by golly, stand alone from the crowd. It's okay. If you just want to get in line with everybody else and keep going down that path, you're going to have an early demise. You can almost guarantee it. Right.
And there's a whole big plant-based vegan community out here that people can just reach out and get a hold of us too, because we'll help you.
Oh man, and and my wife, she laughs all the time. She's like, it's so easy for you now. And I said, you're right. I mean, you and I know, right down the street from Fenway Park, there's a wonderful little vegan spot right there. And so there are places everywhere now. It's not like it was where, 25 years ago, if you went looking around and asking for a vegan option in a restaurant, they'd have looked at you like, what? I'm still surprised now at how many places don't offer some type of a vegan option, because it's, for a chef, it's so simple. And I think most of those people would love to be challenged in the kitchen instead of, okay, I'm grilling another steak. How challenging can that be?
Right.
I would welcome if I was a chef and somebody said, came back from the dining room, the server said, hey, can you make something up with a bunch of vegetables? I'd be jazzed. Hey, let's try something. I think that those days are long gone, and we're getting more and more of those kind of options available to us, which is great, and I just hope it continues.
All right, Matty, thank you very much. Pleasure speaking with you. Thanks for taking the time. Can you just remind people what's the best way to find you, whether it's Instagram, the web, or social media?
Yeah, sure. On Instagram, it's STO Matt Underwood, and I post a lot of pictures on Instagram from my travels, and I love going around and showing off the vegan places that I hit, and so I'm usually, and I go the whole gamut. I'll go to vegan junk food places. I'll go to the highbrow places. I like to try it all, and so I'm usually posting pictures from somewhere where I've been throughout the Major League Baseball landscape that has either a full-on vegan restaurant or has done a really nice job of giving us some kind of an option.
All right, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here on Plant Your Seed.
My pleasure, Fred. Have a great day. Thanks, man.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.